I'm about to show you 5 specific foods that mimic the biological mechanism of beta blockers, effectively slowing the heart rate and relaxing your blood vessels using natural compounds. Most people rely solely on medication to do this heavy lifting, but without the right dietary foundation, you end up in a cycle of increasing dosages and battling erratic numbers that spike the moment you get stressed. I have seen countless patients who felt the terrifying sensation of a pounding chest or the dizziness of unpredictable pressure, living in quiet fear that their kidneys or eyes were being silently damaged while they felt fine on the surface. You might worry that your doctor has missed something or that the medications aren't working the way they promised, which is a frightening place to be. I'm Dr. Ben Harris, and today we are going to change that dynamic by adding powerful tools to your daily routine. Most people try to fix their blood pressure by blindly cutting things out, but they rarely think about what they need to put in to change the structure of their arteries. The order in which you do this matters immensely. Most people do the right thing in the completely wrong sequence, or they prepare these foods in a way that destroys the medicinal compounds before they ever reach your stomach. Let's start with the first one, the nitrate powerhouse. When we talk about lowering blood pressure, we are really talking about physics. Think of your blood vessels as garden hoses. If the hose is narrow and stiff, the water pressure builds up to a dangerous level, straining the pump, which is your heart. Beta blockers and other blood pressure medications work by chemically forcing those hoses to widen and relax. But nature has a way to do this that is incredibly potent, and it comes from dietary nitrates found in beets and beetroot juice. Let me tell you about Arthur. Arthur was 72 years old when he first came to my office, and he was a man who knew what he liked and what he didn't like. He was a retired mechanic, used to fixing engines, but he couldn't seem to fix his own internal engine. Arthur absolutely hated what he called rabbit food. He was a meat and potatoes man, and the idea of eating a salad made him grimace. His blood pressure was consistently sitting around 160/95, which is squarely in the danger zone for a man of his age. He was already on 2 different medications, but his numbers wouldn't budge, and he was starting to suffer from the side effects. He felt tired, sluggish, and he had a constant, dull headache at the base of his skull that ruined his mornings. He told me he was terrified of having a stroke, specifically because he wanted to keep working in his home workshop, and the thought of losing the use of his hands was his biggest nightmare. We made a deal. I told him he didn't have to eat a giant salad, but he had to drink a specific elixir once a day. We introduced a small glass of concentrated beetroot juice, mixed with a little bit of apple juice to mask the earthy taste that he disliked. Arthur was skeptical, but he was also disciplined. He started drinking 4 ounces every morning. For the first week, he didn't notice much, and he grumbled about the taste. But by the 3rd week, something shifted. He came in for a checkup, and for the first time in 3 years, his systolic pressure, the top number, had dropped to 142. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a massive shift from 160. More importantly, that dull headache at the back of his neck had faded away. He had more energy to stand in his workshop, and he wasn't getting winded just walking out to the mailbox. What happened inside Arthur's body is fascinating and well documented by science. When you consume beetroot, your body converts the dietary nitrates into a molecule called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule that tells the smooth muscle cells lining your arteries to relax. When those cells relax, the vessel widens. It is literally opening the floodgates, so the blood can flow freely without resistance. A recent study involving older adults specifically highlighted this effect, showing that regular consumption of beetroot juice could significantly lower systolic blood pressure in a matter of hours. It acts very much like a natural medication, smoothing out the spikes that happen during the day. This is not magic. It is biochemistry. Now, simply knowing this isn't enough. You need to know how to use it. You can roast beets, you can boil them, or you can do what Arthur did and drink the juice. If you choose to cook them, try not to boil them to death, as you want to preserve those nitrates. Roasting them with the skin on is a delicious way to keep the nutrients intact. If you opt for the juice, be careful with the sugar content. Look for pure beetroot juice, not a sugary cocktail that just has a splash of beet coloring. You only need about 4 to 6 ounces a day to see a therapeutic effect. However, a quick word of caution for those of you prone to kidney stones. Beets are high in oxalates, so if you have a history of oxalate stones, you might want to consult your doctor or choose a different nitrate-rich vegetable like arugula or spinach, which we will discuss later. But for most seniors, this is a safe, powerful lever to pull. It supports steadier readings and takes the workload off your heart. Before we move to the next item, I want to ask you a quick question to help me understand who is watching. Comment your age and your usual top number range in the comments below. Seeing the variety of numbers helps everyone realize they are not alone in this struggle. Now let's look at a beverage that works on a different system in the body. 2. The enzyme inhibitor. This item is often called sour tea, and in many cultures, it is the first line of defense against heart issues. We are talking about hibiscus tea. While beetroot works by widening the vessels directly, hibiscus tea works in a way that mimics a class of drugs called ACE inhibitors. It helps block the enzyme that causes blood vessels to constrict. It also has a very mild diuretic effect, similar to water pills, helping your body shed excess sodium that might be holding onto water and driving your pressure up. Let me share the story of Margaret. Margaret was 68. And she was a high-energy woman who loved to host bridge games and volunteer at the library. But Margaret had a habit that was hurting her heart. She was drinking 4 or 5 cups of coffee every single day. She felt she needed the caffeine to keep up with her schedule, but it was leaving her jittery, anxious, and causing her heart to flutter. She described it as a bird trapped in her chest. Her blood pressure was erratic. Some days it was fine. Other days it would spike to 155/90, usually in the afternoon after her 3rd cup of coffee. She didn't want to give up her warm mug ritual. It was her comfort. We decided to make a swap. We kept her morning cup of coffee, but for every cup after that, she had to switch to deep red hibiscus tea. Margaret found the tart flavor refreshing, almost like cranberry. She started brewing a large pot in the morning and drinking it warm or iced throughout the day. The results were remarkable. Within a month, the bird in the chest sensation was gone. Her heart rate settled down because she wasn't bombarding it with caffeine, and the anthocyanins in the hibiscus were working to relax her arterial walls. Her doctor was actually able to lower her blood pressure medication dosage because her numbers had stabilized so well. She felt calmer, less frantic, but still had plenty of energy for her bridge games. Hibiscus is packed with anthocyanins, which are the pigments that give it that deep red color. These compounds reduce arterial stiffness. As we age, our arteries tend to get stiffer, like old rubber hoses that lose their flexibility. Hibiscus helps keep them pliable, allowing them to expand and contract with every heartbeat. This takes a tremendous amount of pressure off the cardiovascular system. To get the benefit, you need to brew it correctly. You want to steep the tea for at least 5 to 7 minutes. This long, steep time extracts the maximum amount of beneficial compounds. It has a naturally tart flavor, so many people are tempted to load it with sugar. Please do not do that. Sugar causes inflammation, which stiffens the arteries and undoes all the good work you are trying to do. If you need sweetness, use a tiny bit of stevia or monk fruit, or just get used to the tangy flavor. It's quite delicious once your palate adjusts. Margaret learned to love it with a slice of lemon and a cinnamon stick. Also, be aware that because hibiscus lowers blood pressure so effectively, if you are already on high doses of medication, you need to monitor your numbers. You don't want them dropping too low, causing you to get dizzy. This is a powerful tea, not just colored water. It supports a calm, rhythmic heart and healthy fluid balance. Now, before we get to the 3rd food, we have to address something that isn't a food, but it is the single most important factor in whether or not your treatment plan works. If you get this wrong, none of the foods matters because you will be chasing a ghost. 3. The measurement trap. This is a mandatory rule for anyone managing blood pressure at home. I cannot tell you how many seniors come to me with terrifying numbers only for us to discover that the numbers are a lie. They are false readings caused by simple errors in how the measurement was taken. You cannot medicate a number that isn't real. Let's talk about James. James was 75, a retired accountant who loved numbers and precision. He bought a top-of-the-line blood pressure monitor and measured himself 3 times a day. He was diligent. But James was panicking. He would call my office saying, "Dr. Harris, it's 170 over 100 again. I don't understand. I took my pills." He was stressed, anxious, and convinced he was about to have a heart attack. When he came into the office, his numbers were high, but not that high. So I asked him to show me exactly what he did at home. James sat down on the exam table. He crossed his legs comfortably. He let his arm dangle at his side. He started talking to me about the traffic while the cuff was inflating, and he had just finished a large cup of coffee in the waiting room. I stopped him immediately. I explained that every single thing he just did adds points to the reading. Crossing your legs can add up to 8 points. Letting your arm hang down instead of supporting it at heart level can add 10 points. Talking while measuring adds another 10 to 15 points. A full bladder can add 10 points. James was stacking all these errors on top of each other, creating a ghost reading that was 30 or 40 points higher than his true blood pressure. We retook the measurement. I had him sit in a chair with back support, feet flat on the floor, uncrossed, arm resting on the table at heart level. We sat in silence for 5 minutes before pressing the button. The result? 135 over 85. James almost cried with relief. He wasn't in a crisis. He was just measuring incorrectly. This is why accurate home measurement is critical. If you are measuring wrong, you might go to your doctor, show them these high numbers, and they might increase your medication unnecessarily. That can lead to dangerous drops in pressure when you stand up, leading to falls and fractures. Here is the checklist you must follow. Use a cuff that fits your arm properly. If the cuff is too small, it will give a falsely high reading. If it is too large, it will read too low. Most seniors need a standard adult cuff, but if you have larger arms, get the large size. Sit quietly for 5 minutes before you measure. No TV, no talking, no reading the news on your phone. Just sit and breathe. Make sure your back is supported and your feet are flat on the floor. Do not measure immediately after a meal, as digestion changes blood flow. And ideally, measure at the same times each day so you can compare apples to apples. By stripping away the error, James regained his peace of mind. He realized his health was much better than he thought, and he stopped living in fear of a stroke that wasn't imminent. This supports accurate decision-making for you and your doctor. If you are finding these tips helpful, please verify that you are subscribed to the channel. We focus entirely on senior health, stripping away the confusion so you can focus on living. Now let's move to the 4th item, and this is where that preparation mistake I mentioned earlier comes into play. 4. The flow improver. This is a staple in almost every kitchen, but scientifically, it is a heavy hitter for cardiovascular health. We are talking about garlic. But not just garlic flavor. We are talking about a compound called allicin. Allicin is the magic ingredient that improves the elasticity of your arteries. It helps the vessel walls move and stretch, preventing the hardening that leads to high blood pressure. It also helps reduce the stickiness of the blood, making it flow more smoothly, like thinning out oil in an engine so it lubricates better. Let me introduce you to Elena. Elena was 70 years old, and she came from a family of amazing cooks. She told me, "Dr. Harris, I eat garlic every single day. I put garlic powder in my soups. I use jarred garlic in my sauces. Why isn't it helping?" Her blood pressure was creeping up, and she suffered from very cold hands and feet, a sign of poor circulation. I explained to Elena that she was eating garlic, but she wasn't getting any allicin. Here is the secret that most people miss. Allicin does not exist in whole garlic cloves. It is only created when 2 chemicals inside the garlic mix together. This mixing only happens when you crush, chop, or chew the garlic. And here is the kicker. It takes time for the reaction to happen. If you chop garlic and immediately throw it into a hot pan, the heat destroys the enzyme before the allicin is created. You get the flavor, but zero medical benefit. Elena was using garlic powder, which has almost no active allicin, or jarred garlic, which is often preserved in acids that neutralize the benefits, or she was cooking fresh garlic too fast. We changed her routine. I taught her the 10-minute rule. She started buying fresh garlic bulbs. Before she started cooking, she would crush the cloves and let them sit on the cutting board for fully 10 minutes. This allows the allicin to develop maximum potency. Then, she would add it to her cooking towards the end to preserve as much of the compound as possible. She also started swallowing a small chopped clove with water like a pill once a day, raw. It was intense, but she was committed. 6 weeks later, Elena noticed something surprising. Her hands weren't freezing anymore. Her circulation had improved significantly because her vessels were dilating. Her blood pressure readings dropped by about 8 points on the top number. It wasn't a miracle cure that replaced all medicine, but it was a significant helper that improved her quality of life. Garlic essentially acts to polish the interior of your arteries, keeping them smooth and responsive. For seniors, this is vital because calcification and stiffening are the enemies of healthy aging. If you are on strong blood thinners like warfarin, you should mention your garlic intake to your doctor, as garlic has a mild, natural blood thinning effect. Usually, culinary amounts are safe, but large amounts should be monitored. But for Elena, this small adjustment in how she cooked made a tangible difference in how she felt. It supports better circulation to the extremities and lowers the resistance your heart has to pump against. We have covered nitrates, enzyme inhibitors, the measurement trap, and the flow improver, but we are not done yet. The next 3 items in our list address the electrical stability of the heart and the nervous system's role in pressure. There is a specific mineral deficiency that causes the muscles around your arteries to spasm and tighten, keeping your pressure permanently elevated, and most seniors are not getting enough of it in their modern diet. I am going to show you exactly how to fix that with a simple side dish in the second part of this video. We will also cover the one same-day lever that works instantly, faster than any pill, to drop your pressure in a moment of stress. You won't want to miss the specific technique for that. Let's continue to the next powerful food that regulates your heart's rhythm. 5. The rhythm regulator. We have talked about widening the pipes with beets and relaxing the walls with hibiscus and magnesium, but now we need to talk about the pump itself. Your heart is an electrical organ. Every beat is triggered by a tiny electrical impulse, and for many seniors, that electrical system starts to get a little twitchy with age. This can lead to a higher resting heart rate. If your heart is beating 80 or 90 times a minute while you are just sitting in your chair watching television, it is working too hard. It is wearing itself out, and that constant rapid pumping keeps your blood pressure elevated because the pressure never has a chance to drop between beats. Beta blockers are often prescribed to slow this down, to put a governor on the engine, but there is a food group that naturally stabilizes the electrical rhythm of the heart, acting very much like a mild, natural beta blocker. We are talking about fatty fish and the power of omega-3 fatty acids. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was 69 years old, and he was a victim of the diet advice from the 1980s and 90s. He grew up hearing that fat makes you fat, and fat causes heart attacks. So Robert eliminated almost all fat from his diet. He ate dry toast, plain pasta, and processed low-fat snacks that were actually full of sugar and fillers. He thought he was being virtuous, but his body was starving for healthy fats. His resting heart rate was sitting at 88 beats per minute, which is on the high side of normal, and he felt anxious and wired all the time. His blood pressure was 150/95. His skin was dry, his joints were creaky, and his brain felt foggy, all signs of omega-3 deficiency. When I suggested he needed to eat fatty fish like salmon or sardines twice a week, he looked at me like I was trying to poison him. "Dr. Ben," he said, "won't that clog my arteries?" I had to explain to Robert that not all fats are created equal. The omega-3s found in cold water fish, specifically EPA and DHA, are essential. Your body cannot make them. You must eat them. They integrate themselves into the cell membranes of your heart muscle, making those cells more stable and less prone to erratic electrical firing. They literally calm the heart down. Robert agreed to try it, mostly because he was tired of his dry, itchy skin. He started having a tin of sardines with lunch twice a week and a piece of baked salmon on Friday nights. He also cut out the processed low-fat cookies he was eating. The change took about 8 weeks, as it takes time for the fats to integrate into the cells, but the result was undeniable. His resting heart rate dropped from 88 down to 72. That might not sound like a lot, but think about the math. That is 16 fewer beats every single minute. That is almost 1,000 fewer beats every hour. That is over 23,000 fewer beats every single day. Imagine how much rest his heart was getting now compared to before. Because his heart wasn't racing, his blood pressure naturally softened, dropping to 135/85. He felt calmer. His joints stopped aching as much because omega-3s are potent anti-inflammatories, and his brain fog lifted. He realized that by avoiding fat, he had been starving his nervous system. For seniors, this is critical. As we age, inflammation rises, and inflammation stiffens arteries. Omega-3s are the fire extinguishers that put out that inflammation. Now, how do you do this correctly? You want smash fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. These are high in healthy fats and generally lower in mercury than giant fish like tuna or swordfish. If you absolutely hate fish, you can look into a high-quality algae oil supplement, which is where the fish get their omega-3s from in the first place. But real food is always the best source because of the protein and minerals that come with it. A safety note here: if you are on blood thinners, talk to your doctor before drastically increasing your fish oil intake or eating huge amounts of fish, as it naturally thins the blood, which is good for pressure, but needs to be balanced with medication. This supports a calm, steady heartbeat and reduces the wear and tear on your cardiovascular system. Here is another simple habit. 6. The relaxation mineral. If calcium is the mineral that helps muscles contract and stiffen, this mineral is the one that helps them let go and relax. In your arteries, there is a constant tug of war between constriction and relaxation. If you are winning the war on constriction, your blood pressure goes up. Nature's natural calcium channel blocker, a common class of blood pressure drugs, is magnesium. And the best delivery system for this is magnesium-rich greens, specifically cooked spinach or Swiss chard. Let's talk about Linda. Linda was 73, and she had a very specific complaint that gave me a clue about her blood pressure. She suffered from terrible leg cramps at night. She would wake up with her calf muscle seized in a knot, screaming in pain. During the day, she was anxious, easily startled, and her blood pressure was always higher in the evening than in the morning. This evening spike is often a sign that the body is depleted and cannot settle down. Linda ate salads, but she mostly ate iceberg lettuce, which is crunchy water and has very little nutritional density. She wasn't getting enough magnesium to tell her muscles, or her arteries, to relax. I explained to Linda that magnesium is the chill pill of the mineral world. It is required for over 300 enzyme reactions in the body, but its main job for her was to push calcium out of the cells so they could soften. We made a simple dietary prescription. I asked her to eat 1 cup of cooked spinach or Swiss chard 3 times a week with her dinner. Why cooked? Because when you cook greens, they wilt down. A giant bag of raw spinach turns into a small cup of cooked spinach. This means you are getting a massive, concentrated dose of magnesium in a very small volume of food that is easy to digest. If you tried to eat that much raw spinach, you would be chewing for an hour and likely get a stomachache. Linda started making a simple side dish of spinach sautéed with a little bit of garlic, giving her that item 4 benefit as well. The results were almost immediate regarding the cramps. Within 3 days, the night cramps stopped. Her muscles had enough magnesium to relax. But over the next month, we noticed her evening blood pressure readings started to come down. She wasn't spiking to 160 before bed anymore. She was staying steady around 135. She slept deeper, woke up more refreshed, and felt less on edge during the day. She was essentially feeding her body the raw material it needed to calm down. It is important to note the difference between types of greens. Iceberg lettuce is fine for crunch, but it is not medicine. Dark leafy greens are medicine. 1 cup of cooked spinach provides nearly 40% of your daily magnesium needs. That is huge. Now, a quick comment prompt for you. I am curious about how you eat your greens. Comment green if you eat raw salads, or cooked if you prefer steamed or sautéed veggies. There is no wrong answer, but it helps to know what you prefer so I can give better advice. Also, just like with the beets, if you have a history of kidney stones, talk to your doctor about oxalates in spinach. You might want to opt for kale or bok choy instead, which are lower in oxalates but still good for you. But for the vast majority of seniors, this addition is a game changer for sleep and pressure. This supports a relaxed vascular system and muscle comfort. One more easy change is actually not a food at all, but it is the only technique that works instantly. 7. The same-day lever. Everything we have discussed so far, beets, hibiscus, garlic, fish, greens, takes time. They work over weeks and months to change your biology. But what do you do when you are stressed right now? What do you do when you get bad news, or you are sitting in the doctor's waiting room and you can feel your heart pounding and you know the reading is going to be high? You need an emergency brake. You need a way to manually override your nervous system. We are talking about deep diaphragmatic breathing, specifically a technique often called the 4-7-8 method. Let me introduce you to Thomas. Thomas was 78 and he had severe white coat hypertension. At home, his pressure was decent, maybe 135/85. But the second he walked into a medical facility, it skyrocketed to 180/100. He would get so anxious about the reading that he would cause the high reading, which made him more anxious, a vicious cycle. Doctors kept trying to add more pills, but he would get dizzy at home because his pressure was actually too low when he was relaxed. Thomas felt trapped. He came to see me, and I could see he was gripping the armrests of the chair, his knuckles white. I didn't put the cuff on him. I said, "Thomas, we aren't going to measure yet. We are going to breathe." I taught him the pattern. Inhale quietly through the nose for a count of 4. Hold the breath for a count of 7. Exhale forcefully through the mouth, making a whoosh sound for a count of 8. This long exhale is the secret key. When you exhale longer than you inhale, you are physically stimulating the vagus nerve. This nerve runs from your brain down to your heart and gut. When stimulated, it sends a powerful signal to your heart. Slow down, we are safe. There is no tiger chasing us. It switches off the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, and switches on the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. Thomas and I did this together for 3 minutes, just sitting there, breathing. I watched his shoulders drop. I saw his hands relax on the armrests. The color returned to his face. Then, without making a big deal of it, I put the cuff on and pressed the button. 150/90. Still a little elevated, but 30 points lower than his usual panic number. He was stunned. "I didn't take a pill," he said. "No," I replied. "You took control of your own biology." Thomas now uses this invisible pill everywhere. He does it in the car if traffic is bad. He does it in the waiting room. He does it before bed to help him fall asleep. This is the most powerful tool you have because it is always with you. It is free, and it works instantly. Most older adults can try this safely anywhere. However, if you feel lightheaded when holding your breath, just shorten the counts. Try breathing in for 3 and out for 6. The ratio matters more than the specific seconds. The out-breath must be longer than the in-breath. This supports immediate stress reduction and prevents temporary spikes from becoming permanent problems. So, let's look at the full picture we have built today. We didn't just talk about eating better. We built a strategic protocol. We used beets to widen the vessels with nitric oxide. We used hibiscus to inhibit the enzymes that constrict them. We fixed your measurement technique so you aren't chasing false numbers. We used garlic to polish the arteries and improve flow. We used fatty fish to stabilize the heart's electrical rhythm. We used magnesium greens to relax the muscle tension. And we used deep breathing as your emergency brake for stress. This is a comprehensive approach that treats your body as a whole system, not just a broken machine. If you start incorporating even 1 or 2 of these changes, you are moving in the right direction. Start with the one that seems easiest to you. Maybe it's the tea, maybe it's the breathing. Master that, then add another. Small hinges swing big doors, and small changes in your daily routine can open the door to a longer, healthier, and calmer life. 8. The sodium antidote. we are constantly told to cut salt. Low sodium is stamped on every heart-healthy product in the grocery store, but cutting salt is only half the battle. Imagine your cells are like a nightclub. Sodium is the bouncer trying to get in and cause trouble, making the club crowded and chaotic, which raises the pressure. Potassium is the security guard that escorts the sodium out the back door. If you have too much sodium and not enough potassium, the sodium stays trapped inside your cells, holding on to water and keeping your blood pressure sky high. You cannot just stop eating salt. You must actively eat potassium to flush the system. Let me tell you about Samuel. Samuel was 74, and he was the most disciplined patient I had ever seen regarding salt. He never used the shaker. He bought unsalted butter. He read every label. But his blood pressure was still hovering around 150/90, and he was frustrated to the point of tears. "Dr. Ben," he said, "I am eating cardboard. Why isn't it working?" I looked at his diet log. It was full of low-sodium bread, low-sodium crackers, and plain rice. It was low in salt, yes, but it was basically dead food. It had almost zero potassium. His body was desperately holding on to whatever tiny amount of sodium he ate because there was no potassium to trigger the exchange. We didn't cut anything else from his diet. Instead, we added one specific food, the avocado. Now, Samuel thought avocados were just for young hipsters, but I explained that half an avocado has more potassium than a banana without the sugar spike that can be dangerous for seniors with pre-diabetes. I asked him to eat half an avocado with his lunch every single day. If he couldn't find a ripe one, we substituted it with a baked sweet potato, another potassium giant, twice a week. The change was physiological and rapid. Within 10 days, Samuel noticed he was using the bathroom more frequently. This was his kidneys finally waking up and flushing out the excess fluid and sodium that had been trapped in his tissues for years. His ankles, which were usually a little puffy by 5 p.m., were slim. And his blood pressure? It dropped to 132/82. He hadn't removed any more salt. He had simply balanced the equation. Potassium relaxes the walls of the blood vessels and lowers blood pressure by protecting against muscle cramping. However, a very serious safety note here. If you are on certain medication for blood pressure, specifically ACE inhibitors or diuretics that are potassium-sparing, or if you have advanced kidney disease, you must talk to your doctor before loading up on potassium. Your kidneys need to be healthy enough to handle the load. But for the average senior with normal kidney function, potassium is the missing link that makes a low-salt diet actually work. It supports the body's natural fluid balance and prevents that bloated, high-pressure feeling. Now, let's look at the structure of the vessels themselves. 9. The vessel repairman. Think of your arteries like the tires on your car. Over time, rubber tires get dry, brittle, and they can crack. Your arteries are lined with collagen, and as we age, that collagen breaks down, making the arteries stiff and prone to microscopic tears. When the body sees a tear, it patches it with cholesterol, plaque. So, to stop the plaque, we need to stop the tearing. We need to keep the collagen strong. The absolute essential fuel for collagen production is vitamin C. I am not talking about a supplement. I am talking about bell peppers and citrus. Let's talk about Maria. Maria was 71 and she bruised like a peach. If she bumped into the coffee table, she would have a purple mark for weeks. She also had high blood pressure, around 155/95. These two things, the bruising and the blood pressure, were connected. Her blood vessels were fragile. They lacked structural integrity because she wasn't eating enough raw vitamin C. She drank pasteurized orange juice, but the pasteurization process destroys a lot of the delicate vitamin C and leaves behind a sugar bomb that spiked her glucose. We needed a source that was low in sugar but high in repair power. I prescribed her the red pepper snack. Red bell peppers have 3 times more vitamin C than an orange. I asked Maria to slice up half a raw red bell pepper and eat it as a snack in the afternoon, maybe with a little hummus. She also started squeezing fresh lemon juice into her water, not from a plastic bottle, but from a real lemon. This provided the raw materials her body needed to knit her collagen back together. After 2 months, the changes were visible. First, the bruising on her arm started to fade and didn't return as easily. This was a sign that her capillaries were stronger. Internally, her larger arteries were becoming more elastic. Her blood pressure readings started to soften, coming down to the low 140s. It wasn't a drastic overnight drop, but it was a steady, structural improvement. Her doctor was pleased because her gums also stopped bleeding when she brushed her teeth, another sign of collagen repair. Most seniors boil their vegetables until they are soft, which destroys the vitamin C. You need to have some crunch in your diet. Raw peppers, raw strawberries, or fresh citrus juice added after cooking are the keys. This supports the physical strength of your cardiovascular system, ensuring the pipes don't leak or crack under pressure. Here is another comment prompt for you. I want to know your preference on this one. Comment sweet if you like red peppers, or sour if you prefer lemons and citrus. It helps me understand what flavors you enjoy so I can tailor these tips. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room that connects two major health issues. 10. The sugar pressure link. We often treat blood pressure and blood sugar as two different departments. You see a cardiologist for one and an endocrinologist for the other, but in your body, they are the same system. High blood sugar makes your blood sticky, like syrup. Pumping syrup is much harder than pumping water. It forces the heart to strain, raising your blood pressure. If you have borderline sugar issues, or if you are pre-diabetic, your blood pressure will never be truly controlled until you control the insulin. The food weapon for this is soluble fiber, specifically from oats or beans. Let me introduce you to Franklin. Franklin was 76, and he was a meat and bread guy. He had high blood pressure, 160/90, and his doctor told him his fasting blood sugar was creeping up to 115. He wasn't diabetic yet, but he was knocking on the door. Franklin didn't eat sweets, but he ate white toast, instant mashed potatoes, and white rice. These are fast-digesting carbs that spike insulin. Insulin causes your kidneys to hoard sodium, so the high sugar was causing the high salt retention, which caused the high pressure. It is a domino effect. We had to break the chain. We swapped his morning white toast for a bowl of old-fashioned rolled oats, not the instant kind with sugar packets, but the slow-cooking kind. We added walnuts and cinnamon. The soluble fiber in oats, called beta-glucan, forms a gel in the gut. This gel slows down the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. Because the sugar hit the blood slower, his insulin didn't spike. Because his insulin didn't spike, his kidneys were able to release sodium. It took about 3 weeks. Franklin came in with his logbook. "Dr. Ben," he pointed to the page, "look at the morning numbers." His fasting blood sugar had dropped to 98, and miraculously, his blood pressure had followed it down to 138/85. He hadn't taken a new blood pressure pill. He had simply lowered the viscosity of his blood by managing his sugar. For seniors, this is arguably the most important connection to understand. If you are fighting stubborn blood pressure that won't go down no matter how many pills you take, check your sugar. Are you eating enough fiber to sponge up that glucose? A recent study confirmed that increasing dietary fiber intake is inversely associated with blood pressure levels in older adults, meaning more fiber equals less pressure. If you don't like oatmeal, beans and lentils are fantastic alternatives. Just half a cup of beans in your soup can provide that gel-forming fiber. However, if you are not used to fiber, start slow. If you go from 0 to a huge bowl of beans, you will get gas and bloating. Start with a few spoonfuls and let your gut adjust over a week. This supports metabolic health, which is the foundation of vascular health. Now, let's move to something that isn't food, but it is something you consume every day, and most seniors are doing it wrong. 11. The hydration factor. As we age, our thirst mechanism breaks down. The signal from your brain that says, "I am thirsty," gets weaker. By the time you actually feel thirsty, you are already dehydrated. When you are dehydrated, your blood volume drops, but your body panics. To keep blood flowing to your brain, your blood vessels constrict tightly to maintain pressure. Also, the blood becomes thicker and harder to pump. This leads to a paradoxical situation where dehydration causes high blood pressure. we need to talk about mineralized water. Let's talk about Eleanor. Eleanor was 80 years old and she lived in a warm climate. She was very proud of the fact that she didn't drink soda, she only drank water, but she drank distilled water because she was afraid of tap water contaminants. She was drinking empty water, no minerals. She was constantly dizzy when she stood up, hypotension, but had high pressure when she sat down, hypertension. Her system was chaotic. She was also running to the bathroom every 20 minutes because the water was running right through her. I explained to Eleanor that water needs minerals, electrolytes like sodium, potassium, and magnesium, to actually stay inside the cells. Distilled water can actually leach minerals out of your body. We made a simple change. I didn't ask her to buy expensive sports drinks, which are full of sugar and dyes. I asked her to take her filtered water and add a tiny pinch of high-quality sea salt, like Celtic or Himalayan, and a squeeze of lemon to every glass. Just a few grains of salt, not enough to taste salty. This turned her water into an electrolyte solution. Suddenly, she wasn't running to the bathroom constantly. Her body was absorbing the hydration. Her blood volume stabilized. The dizziness upon standing disappeared because her blood volume was healthy enough to fight gravity. And her resting blood pressure stabilized because her vessels didn't have to clamp down in panic mode to keep the blood moving. She felt more alert, her skin looked less creepy, and her energy levels soared. For seniors, the rule of thumb is to drink half your body weight in ounces of water, but you have to sip it, not chug it. If you drink a huge glass all at once, you will just trigger a bathroom trip. Sip slowly throughout the day. And watch out for tea and coffee, they are diuretics, meaning they push water out. For every cup of coffee, you need an extra glass of water to break even. This supports a stable blood volume and prevents the panic constriction of dehydration. Now, there is one final piece of the puzzle. It acts like a hormone in the body, and it dictates how your kidneys handle pressure. 12. The hormonal anchor. This is technically a vitamin, but it acts like a steroid hormone. We are talking about vitamin D and sunlight. There is a system in your body called the renin-angiotensin system. It is a mouthful, but it is the master control switch for blood pressure. When this system is overactive, your blood pressure stays high. Vitamin D is the chemical key that turns the system down. It suppresses the enzyme renin. Most seniors are chronically deficient in vitamin D because we spend more time indoors, and aging skin is less efficient at converting sunlight into the vitamin. Let me share the story of Albert. Albert was 75 and he was a night owl. He watched old movies late at night and slept until noon. He rarely saw the sun. His blood pressure was difficult to control, and he also suffered from vague muscle aches and the blues. We tested his vitamin D levels, and they were in the basement, single digits. I told Albert his body was literally in a dark winter mode, hoarding resources and keeping pressure high for survival. We couldn't just rely on food for this, although fatty fish and egg yolks help. We needed the sun. I gave Albert a prescription, the morning walk. He had to get up by 9 a.m. and sit on his porch or walk for 15 minutes with his sleeves rolled up, exposing his arms and face to the light. We also added a vitamin D3 supplement with K2 to ensure the calcium went to his bones, not his arteries. It took about 3 months to correct the deficiency, but the transformation was profound. His mood lifted significantly. He wasn't grumpy in the mornings anymore. His muscle aches vanished. And his doctor was able to drop one of his 3 blood pressure medications because his baseline numbers had drifted down by 10 points. The sun had signaled to his renin system that it was okay to relax. If you live in a northern climate or can't get outside, a supplement is almost mandatory for seniors. But ask your doctor for a blood test first. You want to know your numbers so you can dose correctly. Don't guess with hormones. This supports the chemical signaling that dictates your baseline pressure. So let's look at the complete picture we have created together across this entire journey. We started with the heavy hitters. Beets for nitric oxide and hibiscus for enzyme inhibition. We fixed your measurement so you aren't scaring yourself with false readings. We added garlic to smooth the flow and fatty fish to calm the heart's rhythm. We used magnesium greens to stop the cramping. We learned to breathe to stop the stress spikes. then we went deeper. We balanced the salt with avocado and potassium. We repaired the vessel walls with vitamin C from peppers. We managed the sugar pressure link with fiber from oats. We fixed your hydration with minerals. And we anchored the whole system with vitamin D. This is not a list of 12 chores. This is a menu of opportunities. You do not have to do all 12 starting tomorrow. That would be overwhelming, and stress is the enemy of blood pressure. Pick one from the first section, maybe the beets. Pick one from this section, maybe the hydration. Master those two. See how you feel. Then add another. Health is not a sprint. It is a marathon, and you are in training for the rest of your life. Remember, your body is incredibly forgiving. It wants to heal. It wants to have normal pressure. You just have to give it the right tools to do the job. If you found this deep dive helpful, please share it with a friend or a spouse who needs to hear it. We are building a community of seniors who are taking control, one meal at a time, and make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss our next guide on senior vitality. I'm Dr. Ben Harris. Here is to your health, your heart, and your peace of mind. I'll see you soon.